The doctor was a burly man who communicated strength through his erect posture. Unlike his receptionist, there was no judgment in his stare, no unwise questions on his tongue. He seemed to welcome Zaliha in every way. He made her sign some papers and then more papers in case anything went wrong either during or after the procedure. Next to him, Zaliha felt her nerves slacken and her skin thin out, which was too bad because whenever her nerves slackened and her skin thinned out, she became as fragile as a tea glass. And whenever she became as fragile as a tea glass, she couldn't help but come close to tears. And that was one thing she truly hated. Harboring profound contempt for VP women ever since she was a little girl, Celia had promised herself never to turn into one of those walking miseries who scattered tears and nitpicky complaints everywhere they went, and of which there were far too many around her. She had forbidden herself to cry. To this day, she had on the whole managed pretty well to stick to her promise and if tears welled up in her eyes, she simply held her breath and remembered her promise. So on this first Friday of July, she once again did what she had always done to stifle the tears. She took a deep breath and thrust her chin upwards as an indication of strength. This time, however, something went awfully wrong and the breath she had held came out as a sob. The doctor did not look surprised, he was used to it. The woman always cried. There, there, he said, trying to console Zaliha while putting on a pair of medical gloves. It's going to be all right. Don't you worry, it's only a slumber. You'll sleep, you'll dream. Before you finish your dream, we'll wake you up and you'll go home. After that, you will remember nothing. When Zaliha cried like this, all of her expressions became discernible and her cheeks sunk in, thus accentuating the most telling feature of hers, her nose. That remarkably aquiline nose of hers, which she, like her siblings, had inherited from their father. Hers, unlike her siblings, was sharpened further on the ridge and elongated a bit more on the edges. The doctor patted her shoulder, handed her a tissue, and then handed her the whole box. He always had a spare box of tissues ready by his desk. Drug companies distributed these tissue boxes free of charge, along with pens and notebooks and other things that carried their company names. They made tissues for women patients who could not stop crying. Figs, delicious figs, good ripe figs. Was it the same vendor or a new one? What did his customers call him? Figgist? Celia thought to herself as she laid still on a table in a room unnervingly white and immaculate. Neither the accoutrements nor even the knives scared her as much as this absolute whiteness. There was nothing in the color white that resembled silence. Both were emptied of life. In her endeavor to sway away from the color of silence, Zaliha grew distracted by a black spot on the ceiling. The more she fixed her stare on it, the more the spot resembled a black spider. First, it was still, but then it started to crawl. The spider grew bigger and bigger as the injection started to spread in Zaliha's veins. In a few seconds, she was so heavy she could not move a finger. As she tried to resist being carried away by the anesthetized slumber, she started to sob again. Are you sure this is what you want? Perhaps you would like to mull it over, said the doctor in a velvety voice, as if Zaliha was a pile of dust and he was afraid of brushing her away with the wind of his words if he spoke louder. If you'd like to reconsider this decision, it's not too late. But it was. Zaliha knew it had to be done now on this first Friday of July. Today or never. There is nothing to consider. I cannot have her. She heard herself blurt out. The doctor nodded, as if waiting for this gesture. All of a sudden, the Friday prayer poured into the room from the nearby mosque. In seconds, another mosque joined in, and then another and another. Zaliha's face contorted in discomfort. She hated it when a prayer originally designed to be called out in the pureness of the human voice was dehumanized into an electro voice roaring over the city from microphones and cabinet speakers. Soon the clamor was so deafening she suspected there was something wrong with the loudspeaker system of each and every mosque in the vicinity. Either that or her ears had become extremely sensitive. It will be over in a minute. Don't worry. It was the doctor speaking. Zaliha looked at him quizzically. Was her contempt for the electro prayer so obvious on her face? Not that she minded. Among all the Kazansky women, she was the only one who was openly irreligious. As a child, it used to please her to imagine Allah as her best friend, which was not a bad thing, of course, except that her other best friend was a garrulous, freckled girl who had made smoking a habit at the age of 8. The girl happened to be the daughter of their cleaning lady, a chubby Kurdish woman with a mustache she did not always bother to shave. Back in those days, the cleaning lady used to come in their house twice a week, bringing her daughter along on each visit. Zaliha and the girl became good friends after a while, even cutting their index fingers to mix their blood and become lifelong blood sisters. For a week, the two girls went around with bloody bandages wrapped around their fingers as a sign of their sisterhood. Back in those days, whenever Zaliha prayed, it would be this bloody bandage she would be thinking about. If only Allah too could become a blood sister, her blood sister. Pardon me. She would instantly apologize and then repeat again and again, because whenever you apologize to Allah, you had to do it thrice. Pardon me, pardon me, pardon me. It was wrong. She knew. Allah could not and should not be personified. Allah did not have fingers or blood for that matter. One had to refrain from attributing human qualities to him. That's to say, him, which was not easy, since every one of his, that's to say, his 99 names happened to be qualities also pertinent to human beings. He could see it all but had no eyes. He could hear it all but had no ears. He could reach out everywhere but had no hands. Out of all this information, an 8-year-old Zaliha had drawn the conclusion that Allah could resemble us, but we could not resemble him, or was it vice versa? Anyway, one had to learn to think about him, that's to say, him without thinking of him as him. The chances are she would not have minded this as much if one afternoon she had not spotted a bloody bandage around her elder sister Faride's index finger. It looked like the Kurdish girl made her a blood sister too. Zaliha felt betrayed. Only then it dawned on her that her real objection to Allah was not that's to say, his not having any blood, but rather having too many blood sisters. Too many to care for, so as to end up not caring for anyone. The episode of friendship had not lasted long after that. The konak being so big and dilapidated, and mom being so grumpy and mulish, the cleaning lady quit after a while, taking her daughter away. Having been left without a best friend whose friendship indeed had been rather dubious, Zaliha felt a subtle resentment, but she hadn't quite known toward whom. To the cleaning lady for quitting, to her mom for making her quit, to her best friend for playing two sides, to her elder sister for stealing her blood sister, or to Allah. The others being utterly out of reach, she chose Allah to be resentful toward. Having felt like an infidel at such an early age, she saw no reason why she shouldn't do so as an adult. Another call to prayer from another mosque joined in. The prayers multiplied in echoes as if drawing circles within circles. Oddly enough, at this moment in the doctor's office, she worried about being late for dinner. She wondered what would be served at the table this evening and which one of her 3 sisters had done the cooking. Each of her sisters was good with a particular recipe, so depending on the cook of the day, she could pray for a different dish. She craved stuffed green peppers, a particularly tricky dish since every one of her sisters made it so differently. Stuffed green peppers. Her breathing slowed while the spider started to descend. Still trying to stare at the ceiling, Zaliha felt as if she and the people in the room were not occupying the same space. She stepped into the kingdom of Morpheus. It was too bright here, almost glossy. Slowly and cautiously she walked along a bridge teeming with cars and pedestrians and motionless fishermen with worms wiggling at the ends of their spinning rods. As she navigated among them, every cobblestone she stepped out on turned out to be loose, and to her awe, there was only void underneath. Soon she realized in horror that what was below was also above, and it was raining cobblestones from the blue skies. When a cobblestone fell from the sky, a cobblestone lessened from the pavement below. Above the sky and under the ground, there was the same thing, void. As cobblestones rained from above, enlarging further the cavity underneath, she panicked, afraid of being swallowed by the hungry abyss. "Stop!" she cried out, as the stones kept rolling under her feet. "Stop!" she commanded the vehicle speeding toward her and then running her over. "Stop!" she begged the pedestrian shouldering her side. "Please stop." When Zaliha woke up, She was alone, nauseous, and in an unfamiliar room. How on earth she could have walked here was a puzzle she had no desire to solve. She felt nothing, neither pain nor sorrow, so she concluded, in the end, the indifference must have won the race. It wasn't only her baby, but her senses too, that had been aborted on that pure white table in the next room. Perhaps there was a silver lining somewhere. Perhaps now she could go fishing and finally manage to stand still for hours on end and without feeling frustrated or left behind, as if life were a swift hare she could only watch from a distance but never possibly catch. There you are, finally back. The receptionist was standing by the door, arms akimbo. Goodness gracious, what a fright. How you scared us. Do you have any idea how you shrieked? It was so awful. Zaliha laid still without blinking. The pedestrian on the street must have thought we were slaughtering you or something. I only wonder why the police did not show up at the door. Because it is the Istanbul police you're talking about, not some brawny uh, cop in an American movie, Zaliha thought to herself as she finally allowed herself a blank blink. Still not quite understanding why she had annoyed the receptionist, but seeing no point in annoying her any further, she offered the first excuse that came to her mind. Maybe I screamed because it hurt, but that excuse, no matter how compelling, was instantly crushed. It could not possibly miss, for the doctor has not performed the operation. We have not even laid a hand on you. What do you mean? Zelia faltered, trying less to find out the answers than to comprehend the weight of her own questions. You mean you have not?